There's one more game I want to talk about today. It's the 7:30 game on ACC Network between number 14 Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. Notre Dame's top prospects, senior quarterback Jack Coan, has been replaced recently, been in and out of the lineup with injuries, and also just being an inconsistent player right now. So I don't expect him to actually be drafted if he goes to the draft. He probably will be a priority UDFA. Junior running back Kyrie Williams has a chance to be the best running back in this class. He's super versatile, great in pass protection, great run, receiving out of the backfield, good runner in any facet of the game, really. The issue's been that he's not super bursty. He doesn't have some like the pure physical traits a lot of teams want. He's a little bit smaller than some teams are looking for. And he's playing behind just a really bad offensive line right now. It really has not given him much to work with at all. So it's hard to really evaluate him because he's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. We're at the line of scrimmage so much this year. The only lineman this year that I would even consider draftable from Notre Dame is Jarrett Patterson, the junior center. Other than that, I wouldn't consider any of the linemen from Notre Dame draftable at this point because it's been such a bad year, which is so uncharacteristic for Notre Dame. But right now, this offensive line just is not very good. Going over to the defensive side of the ball, senior defensive tackle Jayson, that's a hard last name, Jayson Ademilola. There we go, Jayson Ademilola is probably one player I would keep an eye on. Like I said, this defensive tackle class or an interior defensive line class is really up and down. It's back and forth. I don't think there's a lot of great talent, not a lot of high caliber talent in this unit, but there is a lot of guys who would go late round 3, any point on day 3. And really, Notre Dame has contributed to that a little bit here. Ademilola is someone who I think will be in that group. He's only 280 pounds, so I think you can actually see him convert maybe to a 3-4 defensive end. Necessarily not really be like a down defensive line. Be a down defensive line, but not be an interior like defensive tackle kind of player. A 3-4 defensive end for that build makes a little bit more sense than asking him to try to play pure defensive tackle, especially against some of the beefier offensive lines in the NFL where the average on the interior is like 340 pounds or something like that. Edge rushers, Isaiah Falsky has probably been the most productive guy for Notre Dame this year in terms of getting a consistent pass rush. I've featured him in some stock up, stock down articles so far this year where his stock is generally trending up because he's performed fairly well when asked to. Just looking at what he's done recently, I'm pulling up his game logs right now, and he's, by the way, about 260 pounds. So he's a good size player. He's 6'5". Not super beefy for a defensive end, but you're looking for someone who's maybe a defensive end / outside linebacker hybrid in some schemes. Certainly seems to have the right build for that. And just recently, 2 sacks against FSU, 1 against Toledo, half a second against Purdue, 1 second against Cincinnati, and a forced fumble. So, fairly good player, fairly productive player, which is what you're looking for from these guys in college football. And I think he'll have the athletic traits to be a mid-round selection in the NFL as well. And senior edge rusher Myron, Tagovailoa-Amosa. Thank you, Tua, again, for helping me know how to pronounce that name. But another guy who I consider to be a bit of an underrated prospect. I don't think a lot of people talk about him because Foskey's been so productive. Or maybe they just don't watch a lot of Notre Dame football. Myron's a little bit small. He's 6'2", but he is about 268, so he packs a lot of punch and a bit of a smaller frame. He's got 2.5 sacks this year. I'm kind of back and forth on where he can go, honestly, because I think there's a lot of potential there that has not been tapped yet. And I said I think he's an underrated prospect, but again, just from the production standpoint, I don't really know. The testing numbers make more of an impact on where someone gets drafted sometimes than they should. But if he tests poorly, I could see him being labeled as one of those guys who's an undersized college player who wasn't super productive, who doesn't have the elite physical traits to necessarily be drafted as a top 200 player. So we'll see how this all turns out. But again, it's really hard to list all these guys without knowing some of the physical traits and knowing some of the combine numbers. Graduate linebacker Drew White has been very productive for Notre Dame consistently. He's someone I keep an eye on. And then, of course, junior safety Kyle Hamilton, to me, is the best prospect in the entire 2022 draft. But he likely won't be taken first overall because, 1, the value of his safety is just not that high. And 2, the chances are a team that's going to be picking first just will not want to take a safety when you have potentially a quarterback or a premier edge rusher like Kayvon Thibodeau on the board. Switching over to Virginia Tech, a team that's not ranked right now but has beaten some good teams in the past. Junior wide receiver Tre Turner is trending down for me. He's a guy who has not had a lot of production this year. Based on what I expected from him, it's been a bit of a disappointing campaign. He might even come back to college for another year to try to fix things. Junior tight end James Mitchell is out for the season. He only played in 2 games this year. before getting hurt, so that's unfortunate. But he was a guy who was on my radar before the injury. Redshirt sophomore, left tackle, Tenuta, someone to keep an eye on. He's not had a great season so far, so him coming back would be something else I would expect, or something else I wouldn't be shocked by if we decide to give it at least one more year. But I think he has 2 more years of eligibility, so he could come back for a while if he wants to. Junior guard, Lestitus Smith is someone else to keep an eye on. He's probably been their best offensive lineman this year so far. But again, it's hard to place into your offensive lineman in the draft because the positional value is so much lower compared to what it is for offensive tackles, for a lot of other positions along the offensive side of the ball. Because really, maybe outside tight end or running back at this point, guards and centers are just not high-value players. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, junior edge rusher Amari Barno started off the season kind of hot and has kind of cooled off a little bit in recent weeks. He's a little bit, again, another player who's a little bit undersized. I talked about some guys in the past who don't necessarily have the build to be pure NFL edge rushers or be pure NFL defensive ends or outside linebackers. Barno at 245, he's 6'6". If he gets up to 255, he'll probably be fine. But you have to add some extra muscle to that frame because guys who are under 250 generally do not have the best careers as edge rushers or outside linebackers in the NFL. And you can get away with that in college, but it just won't happen in the NFL because you're playing against guys who are consistently the best of the best in college who go to the NFL and are 320 to 350 pounds. Junior linebacker Dax Holyfield is someone else I would keep an eye on. He's a productive college linebacker, probably be a day 3 kind of guy. Sophomore linebacker Alan Tisdale is another player who doesn't really jump off the page to me as a high-level draft pick, but still a player who should get taken at some point in the draft. And we'll close off this whole thing by talking about junior cornerback Jermaine Waller, who's been very productive this year so far in terms of getting interceptions, getting his hands on the ball. Unfortunately, compared to a lot of other top cornerback prospects that you might be able to see in the top 30 cornerback rankings I released on my newsletter recently, you can go follow me on Twitter at Sam_Teets33. That's SAM_TEETS33. If you want to go see those rankings, but he's been productive. He's just allowed a lot more catches than most of the top corners, which is why I don't view him as a first-round caliber player, because he's allowed, like I said, more catches than the other top cover players. He's given up more yards in coverage, but he has more turnovers, so it's kind of hard to, balance it out. He was really good in 2019. He had 3 picks that year and 10 passes defense. He's been good this year. 3 interceptions and 2 passes defense, but he's allowed more yards, I think, this year than he had in 2019 in terms of average yards allowed per game. So it's kind of a back and forth, but where do you view him as an NFL prospect? I view him still being a top 100 caliber player, someone who's going to go in the first 3 rounds with the possibility to rise up and be in the end of round 2. But that's a wrap for this weekend series of prospects to watch. This is my final video that I'm doing for the series this week. I'm not covering any more games or any more prospects because I'm tired of doing it. My voice hurts at this point. But we'll come back next week. We'll talk about more of the top prospects and some of the top matchups in all of college football. But for now, thank you for watching. Again, go check me out on Twitter if you want to read some of my articles covering the rankings that are going to be coming out for the top players at every position in all of college football. And if you did enjoy this video and you somehow decided to make it to the end of this, you're insane. But if you made it this far, please subscribe and consider just, following my content in the future. I do stuff like this all the time. I'm going to try to get more and more involved into it as we get into the middle of this college football season. But for now, thank you, and I'll talk to you all later.